lowering this thing, right? That won't fall out and hit me in the head. I'm supposed to talk about missionaries. When Pat and I came on the scene, we came to Houston in '93, and I think we joined the church in '95. We visited, I think, in '93. I didn't realize at the time, in fact, I didn't realize until recently that this church was already over 10 years old. Because the church had just moved here, I guess, maybe a year when Pat and I first visited Cornerstone at Memorial Elementary School. Was it junior high or elementary? Wherever it was. First, Sam was still a pastor at that time. So we didn't know the history, but as far as God's call on us, we came back to Cornerstone a couple of years later and got involved in it, became an elder, and about the same time, God called me to seminary. Actually, it was a little bit before that. But God called me to the seminary in a miraculous way. I didn't know at that time where I was going to be going, what I was going to be doing with that. But later on, God confirmed and called us to Kazakhstan. And it was not, it was a difficult decision to make. It was a difficult road to get there. But by God's grace, we were there. And we moved there in '99. We spent 9 years there. As many of you know, it was not easy, not all of it. A lot of it was great. If you followed some of our fun times, if you could call them fun times, let's say funny times, through Pat's long letters that she sent back, we had quite an experience there for 9 years of working among the people in Kazakhstan and helping them to come to know the Lord, and planting a church there. When we got there, there was only one church. When we left, there were 6 churches. And so we didn't do all that. We were just on the team that did that. So by God's grace, He used us in the 9 years that we were there. And you're going to see a little bit of that story, I guess. Gene and Linda are going to tell some of that story about how we got over there and some of the things that happened to us on the way. But anyway, it was a great ministry for us to be used by God in that area of the world, to be sent out by this church. We had the blessing of having a pastor at that time who's Buck Alpin, who had it on his heart to try to reach the world and try to send people out. Even planted a PCA church at the time that we were there. So it was kind of interesting the way that happened. But anyway, God had led Buck in the right direction to try to get people equipped and trained and to go out and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout the world. So we were privileged to be 2 of those people. We weren't the first to do that. Before we did that, Carl and Jimmy Green had a daughter. Her name was Kathy. And she had a husband whose name was Matt Baker. They went off to Colorado, to Camp Red Cloud, and worked there for many years. They came back apparently, since we weren't here, I didn't know all of the things that were going on while we were gone, but believe that they came back from Colorado, came back to the Houston area just before we came back. But God used them there in His work among the young people, the youth at Camp Red Cloud. We weren't the last as well. Rick and Terry Lowe, while we were again in Kazakhstan, Rick had been very involved with Brian Land with the youth here at Cornerstone, and God called them into Young Life work in Belleville, Texas, and so they went off to do that. And finally, the Anthesis were sent out. They went to Joel came to Kazakhstan while we were there for a vision trip, He saw a huge marquee in the central square of Almaty, the main city, and it was one of those modern digital marquees that you might see in New York City. And he said, Almaty doesn't need me. So that's my story. It's the way I'm telling it, okay? But I don't think he had any idea where God was going to send him next. But anyway, God did send Joel and Cindy and their children to Jos, Nigeria. Wow. I always say I thank God that God didn't send me to Nigeria. But the things that they experienced in the short time that they were there pales. And what we did, what we went through in Kazakhstan pales to what they had to go through there. But God used them mightily in northern Nigeria, I believe, and the way the stories that they told, the letters that they wrote back, God used them, and it was great and wonderful that they were able to do what they did in the time that they were there. And so God brought them home as well. And but the work isn't finished. You saw all of the things that this church does in this country, and the ways that we are reaching. We've got international people coming to our church. Not a lot of them, but God is using Kazakhstan. The way you supported the Anthesis, the way you've supported other people that have gone out. And I know you're going to continue that. God isn't finished sending out people, missionaries to the world from Cornerstone. I don't know who's next, but I'm sure there will be some. And I praise God for that. I wanted to finish with one little thing. I only got, one more minute? Whenever Pat and I were on furlough, one particular 6-month period, I used to preach or teach or talk about our work over there and so on. And I used a passage from Isaiah 52:7. And it says, "How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of those who bring good news, who proclaim peace, who bring good tidings, who proclaim salvation, who say to Zion, your God reigns." And I would talk about how beautiful Pat's feet were. My feet are ugly, but her feet were beautiful. I always thought her feet were beautiful. And it was kind of a joke. It was a way to get, talking about what God is doing to send out messengers to bring good news to the world. And it just struck me the other day when I saw this passage. The first feet were Jesus' feet. His feet were beautiful. They carried the good news. He went from Galilee to Judea and back and forth. He went to Syria and modern day Lebanon. He carried the good news. He carried the news of peace, good tidings, and salvation. When he had finished his work, Mary anointed those feet with her own tears. It's our job to be those feet now, to proclaim good news, to be peace, to bring salvation. And I believe Cornerstone is still going to be the sender that's going to do that. Thanks.